is there anything in this that we could say, again, before we get to the next verses, that there's something about who you are, that there's no choice. There is no hiding. There is no well, no one will know. Nothing will happen. Who I am is light. Wherever I go, I'm light. Whether I'm doing good or evil, whatever it is that I'm doing.
I don't know. I think there is a choice.
Okay.
Meaning like so what does he say here? I mean, he says the purpose of light isn't to put, to hide it.
Yes, not to hide it.
So it's you don't put it in a place where it cannot give light, in a hidden place in verse 15. You only place the menorah, the candelabrum, the menorah, in a place that all the children of the house can see it, right? So the purpose, but you can hide it. Ultimately, there is a choice. Look, and this is the key. This is one of the key principles in the Torah that I think is being reflected here.
Okay.
So I want to jump to this. It's in Deuteronomy. I want to say it's it's one of my favorite passages in the whole Tanakh. And I know I always say that, but I had this conversation with someone, with a very devout Christian lady, and she was telling me that she interprets everything in existence through John 3:16. So anything that happens, anything she ever reads, everything is interpreted through John 3:16. And I thought that was very profound, because I kind of had to stop and think, okay, well, what is the passage that I interpret everything through, right? And I knew exactly what the answer was. Meaning there is a prism through which I interpret everything through, and obviously it's not going to be John 3:16. It's in Deuteronomy. Here, it's chapter 30. Let's start in verse, let me look this up. And I think it's actually profound that this woman was able to say, hey, I interpret everything. It doesn't matter what verse you bring to me, what thing in reality you bring to me. I know how I'm interpreting things, that I have this prism, right? Like a lot of people aren't aware of what their prism is. They have one, or they pretend they don't have one, but they do have one. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just important to be aware of it. Let's start in verse 15 of Deuteronomy 30. See, I set before you today life and prosperity, this is the NIV, death and destruction. In Hebrew it says, I place before you hachayim v'tatov, life and good, v'tamavet v'tara, and death and evil. For I command you today to love Yehovah your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his commands, decrees, and laws. Then you will live and increase, and Yehovah your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. But if your heart turns away and you are not obedient, and if you are drawn away to bow down to other gods and worship them, I declare you this day that you will certainly be destroyed. You will not live long in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. This day I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses.
Amen.
This is the most profound words, I think, in maybe that have ever been spoken. Some of the most profound words. Now choose life, that you and your children may live. And it goes on, that you may love the Lord, Yehovah your God, listen to his voice and hold fast to him, for Yehovah is your life.
Is your life.
Yehovah is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So that statement, choose life that you and your children may live, that you may live, you and your descendants. That you do have a choice. You can be light, but the purpose of light is not to be hidden. The purpose of light is, and look, this is actually a kind of a debate that Jews have had with Christians for centuries. Particularly the older, I don't know if you want to say the older, the mainline medieval denominations of Greek Orthodox and the Catholics. They had this idea that if you really wanted to be righteous, what you needed to do is go into a monastery on a hillside somewhere and live in a cave. And by living in a cave, you would never gossip, you would never hate your brother in your heart, you would never commit slander, you would never offend anybody because you're by yourself in a cave. And the Jewish mentality is, well, no, our purpose isn't to live in a cave somewhere, it's to live in the world. The world that God saw and he said it was good, that he created. Now it's full of evil people. We're told that the thoughts of man are evil from his youth in Genesis. And so the ultimate objective isn't to live in a cave somewhere and thereby be, air quotes, righteous. The ultimate objective is to live in the universe, to live in the world with other people. And despite that, choose good and not bad. And then your light will shine before people. Then people will look and say, okay, wow, it's not easy living with people. It's not easy interacting with people and not sinning. And yet these people, they still live a righteous lifestyle. That is the objective. I think that's how Jews look at it, and I think that's what Yeshua is expressing here. Because if you're living in a cave somewhere, you are on a mountain hidden, right? I mean, you're the lamp that's been lit to be hidden in a cave somewhere. That's your objective.
Yeah.
That ain't it.
Well, I tell you this, Nehemia, when I read this, I still, it says here, listen, you can't hide a city built on a hill. Whatever you do.
Right. Well, we have to remember. So they didn't have street lights back then,
Right.
And highway lights, and you drive on the highway. And it's interesting. In Israel, I would look out my window often, and I would see off in the distance these really bright lights, and they were in the kingdom of Jordan, 30 miles away.
That's cool.
And the guy's driving down the highway in the kingdom of Jordan, and he turns, and his lights are looking directly into my window when I lived in North Jerusalem, and they didn't live in that world.
Right.
In the world of the time of Yeshua and really up until, I don't know, 150, 200 years ago, if you went into the countryside, there was nothing. Let's say there was no moon out, right? You were like about half the month, there's no moon out. You're walking in complete darkness. The closest thing you can see is a city off in the distance, and it's full of light. That's what this means, a city on a hill. Now, if the city's in the valley, I might not see it. But if I'm walking in the countryside and there's a city up on the hill, at night there's going to be a whole bunch of light. Now, they didn't have streetlights even in the city, but there were people who were, had their cook fires going, and there were people who had lamps going, and you would see off in the distance, you're surrounded by darkness, and out there in the distance is this light shining. And I think that's what Yeshua is saying. We live in this world surrounded by darkness, surrounded by sin, iniquity, depravity, cruelty, and the objective that you should strive for is to be that light, that city on the hill, that light that shines and people can say, wow, there is goodness in this world.
Amen.
There are people who live according to righteousness.
Amen.
There are people who exemplify what it means to walk in accordance with the will of God and not the sin and iniquity and depravity. I think that's what he means when he says you are light in the world, and your objective, your purpose is to be that city on the hill.